Okay, we are live. Hi
Okay.
everyone, I'm really excited to interview Douglas Snider. He's a senior VDC technologist at Leopardo Companies. I came across Doug's work through a YouTube video where he was using natural language to print sheets in Revit, and he shared like a detailed tutorial how to implement it. And another interesting video I found on his YouTube channel was operating shades in Unity using natural language. So that was being done in 2017. So I thought I should get Doug on the show and to talk about the various automation he's doing, and it's really inspiring when I saw those videos. So thanks a lot, Doug, for your time to do this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. And it's great meeting you in person finally. Well, almost in person. As close as we can get right now.
Yeah. So Doug, can you share a few highlights of your career from right when you graduated to where you are today?
Sure, sure. Actually, before I went back to school, I worked for a computer company, and that was kind of my first like real big time job. Back in when computer companies were fighting with each other to get the most PCs out there. Um, and I worked kind of doing some quality management stuff, which was great. I learned a lot there, and then I decided to go back to school for architecture. And I went to school for architecture, and we had to have a focus. And I had a buddy at the time who had a crush on a girl who was in who was in anthropology, and so he said, "Hey, we got to go on this archaeology dig this summer, right?" So we went on the dig, and I ended up making anthropology my focus, which was cool because the archaeology lab. I went to North Dakota State University. The archaeology lab there had all the coolest stuff. Right. Now NDSU has amazing, stuff in the architecture department, all of the cool digital tools and all that. But at the time, all the cool digital tools were in the archaeology department. We're using laser scanners, and they had all the modeling software and all that stuff. So I got a job at the lab as soon as I could, and that's where I really kind of picked up a lot of this technology that I'm still using. Here we are almost 20 years later. So that was really cool. And then I graduated, worked at the lab for a few years after that, doing some cool stuff, and then switched over into architecture, worked for some small firms here in Chicago, and then a couple of larger firms, and then actually Leopardo, the company I'm with now, is a general contractor, and they had built one of the buildings that I worked on the architecture side, and got to know a few folks there. And when this job came up, it just seemed like a really good fit. So I moved over about 4 years ago now.
I see. And like, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Like many times it's being said that construction industry is a bit backward in terms of adopting new technologies. So
Mhm.
during your career, like was there any time you faced the friction to adopt new technology, or if you had any initiatives, how did you thrive on those
Mhm.
during those times?
Yeah. So generally, as an industry, I think we're starting to get a little bit better. In the last few years, but it is a slow process to bring new technology into a large firm, and then into a large firm that's been around for 35 years. So there is constantly resistance, but the key is to kind of show the one special thing, how it's going to help somebody, how it's going to make their job easier, and get a champion on board who will try it out, who will use it, fix some of the bugs before we really start rolling it out. And the VDC group, Virtual Design and Construction Group at Leopardo, is only about 6 years old. And so for a company that as large as Leopardo, as old as Leopardo, we're still new, and trying to bring a lot of these VDC best practices into the company.
I see. And like for viewers who are not aware about VDC, can you like walk us through like what are the roles and responsibilities as a VDC
Yeah.
specialist?
So VDC is it stands for Virtual Design and Construction, and basically all VDC is it's practice. So like you don't expect an elite baseball team or elite football team to go out there on Sunday and play their game without practicing. And so basically that's what VDC is we get the right people in the room to put the building together, to put a schedule together, to figure out how we're going to build this thing digitally before we go out there and build it when it gets really expensive to fix problems. So when with VDC we're using tools like BIM, using Navisworks. A lot of people, when they think VDC, if they know much about it, they think coordination and clash detection, and that is a big part of it. So what we're doing is we're building the major systems of the building and making sure we don't have conflicts. But basically, at the end of the day, it's it's practice. We're building this project for practice, and how do we safely and efficiently have the right person put the right thing in the right place at the right time for the right amount of money. Like you get those 7 things down, you're going to be successful. So that's basically what VDC is in a nutshell.
I see. And apart, like what additional knowledge you had to acquire from your architecture background to prepare for this role? Yeah.
Yeah. So my architecture thesis was actually on designing in a virtual environment because I was really excited about that back in the day. And I had done this project with a few other team members, and we had modeled it up on the computer, and we're able to spin around it and talk about it and make changes right on the fly. And I was just like, this is magical. Like this is game changing, right? So that was the big thing. And so so we had to learn software. 3D modeling software specifically. And then, as you're kind of getting into the information part of the BIM, you really want to be able to look at that information, parse that information, and so I got into a little bit of programming where, I taught myself a little bit of Python programming. I'm not a programmer, I can hack my way through a few small things here and there. So, but it's very helpful, to be able to get things in and out of the model that way. And so then there's, as you know, there's Dynamo, which is like a visual programming language, which connects directly to Revit. So I taught myself that. And so as far as software goes, man, there's just so many different things, photogrammetry, dealing with point clouds and laser scanning. We do a lot of that. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't stop. Like I'm constantly learning new pieces of software and new tools. Yeah.
I see. And like, what are some like cutting edge construction technologies out there?
Cutting edge. Well, some of the new stuff that I've seen that I think is really cool is the layout robots. Have you seen those? Yeah, some of the layout.
I've seen Dusty Robotics, which does like printing of plans on the site.
Exactly. Yeah. You go home for the night, you come in the morning, you got your layout done. That's pretty fantastic. So that's kind of really cutting edge where it's not really there yet. People aren't doing this as a established process yet. So that's coming right around the corner. And then a lot of the construction technology, it's a lot of the whiz bang stuff is stuff we've been talking about for years. So it's it's going to be the drones, it's going to be the photogrammetry, it's going to be the point clouds. But what I'm liking, and I'm not seeing here, but there's more and more conversations about it, and is putting in and retrieving the information from BIM. So making that information a really important part, especially in construction, as we're documenting all sorts of things and being able to have that collaboration and communication with the designers and the subs. It's super important. So just being able to share that information in a easy way, collaborative way.
I see. And is there any like construction technology you wish it is there, but it's not being developed yet?
There's construction technology that I wish was there but not developed yet. Well, I'm excited about robotics. I think robotics is going to do some really cool stuff. Now, as far as like one piece of thing that's there that I'm not really sure, but I think we're going to see some really cool stuff out of robotics. I'm excited where that's going. You mentioned one of my videos was natural language processing, talking to Revit. That was just kind of a tutorial, kind of like hack this thing together. It was fun. I didn't even have an Alexa device. I was just like using a Raspberry Pi, but I just thought, what if we could just talk to the model and get information? And I think as we're starting to get repositories of all this data, all this construction data, all this design data, just being able to talk to it, especially people, once you get into like facilities management and the building starts being lived in, people who don't have access to a model or don't know how to use that software, it opens up, it takes the information out of the model and gives it to everybody. Because anybody can, well, not anybody, but you can ask a question of anything about the project, and it can pull it out of that data repository. So that data lake is really exciting.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So I'm curious to know, like, what are some data-driven construction decisions the industry makes?
Say that one more time. What are some data-driven what?
Like decisions in construction you make out of like previous data? Is there any methodology?
Right. So previous data. So one thing that we're looking at automating at Leopardo is called so there's this process called pole planning, where we'll take the schedule, we'll go into a big room with all the subs, and we'll lay the schedule out on the board on stickies, right? So actual sticky notes on a big board, and say, okay, on Tuesday, this is what's going to get done. And then what we'll do is we'll come back, we'll count, which of those stickies that we said we were going to do actually got done, and how does that go back to our main construction schedule. So we've started digitizing that a little bit, and using some digital tools, and then we started some automating tools to like pull that data out, so we can get long-term data on, this is how long we said it was going to take to do things, and this is how long it actually took to do things, and these are the reasons why. And so once we start gathering all of that data, that's boots on the ground information of how the schedule is being put into the real world. And so once you have a lot of that data, you can go back and start making better schedule decisions, better hiring decisions of different subcontractors and things like that.
Like, and another question I had is, what are some like gaps you see in like architecture and construction? Is there any way you wish, like, if architects provided like BIM model in this format or more additional information, it would make the job for VDC or construction guys easier?
Yeah, well, so a lot of architecture design is and Revit and BIM for the most part has become a drawing replacement tool, which is fantastic. It's got a lot of power, it's got a lot of value. But what we're doing is we're taking that model, and then we're trying to build a practice building out of it, right? So we need it to be at a different level. We're not just making drawings out of it, we're pretending to build it. And that's the difference between architecture and kind of once it goes over the wall to VDC. And so I think if there was more early collaboration between the contractor and their VDC team and the architect, we can start making sure that that model is going to have the information in it and be built the right ways, not the right way, to be built in a way that where once it passes over the wall, it has embodied value that's more than just drawing.
I see. And what are some like common things which led to like delay in the construction and like typical like coordination challenges?
Whereas typical coordination challenges, and well, it's so the biggest one that we see on almost every project is we've got structure, we've got mechanical, and we've got ceilings and the ceilings always have to get lower. So, if we could just figure that out earlier, it's going to save a lot of headache on the design side. So like that's a constant, is we're going to have to lower the ceiling. Uh, as far as just general conflicts, um, I'm not sure. I'm not thinking of any off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was thinking in terms of like sometimes there are code compliance or issues from the authority, or like what are like some issues which are like common in terms like from project to project.
Mm-hmm. As far as code stuff, I'm trying to think of things where it's very common. Honestly, we work with some really good architects, and as far as code stuff goes, I'm not thinking of something where like, well, everybody misses that. That's not the sort of thing that we see. It's usually some smaller design things that have bigger impacts than people imagine that they would have. Utilities are often a thing that we need to pay attention to, that don't always get the attention it deserves, at the beginning of the project. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of blanking on that one. I mean, like, is there something that you're seeing on your side where you're seeing drawings go over and then you're seeing a lot of things come back?
Actually, like I am working as a software developer for architects, so I'm not like in
Yeah.
the
Okay.
whole
Fair enough.
process. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Cool. And so we talked about automation using natural language. What are some other automation like you thought of or you implemented in your workflow?
Mm-hmm. Automation. Well, we did this one kind of project that was kind of fun. I think you'll dig as a developer. One of the things we're often doing is we'll have a floor prep. We do a lot of TI work, so we have to prep the floor for whatever the final flooring is. And that floor prep number is often a lot larger than people would imagine, right? Or we have an allowance, and then the allowance is squishing. It's like, how much is it actually going to be? So we can go in there and laser scan a floor. And then we created a software program that will take that laser scan and move that floor to the level that is in the contract documents, and then tell you what your floor prep number is actually going to be. So we can go back to the subcontractor and say, this is what our floor prep number actually needs to be, because we've scanned it. And that was a fun project. We got into like using K nearest neighbor and trying to figure out what's the best way to kind of make that work. So, and we've used that a few times to some pretty good success. I know we did it on one project where we estimated the right amount of floor prep to the bag that was required. So yeah.
That's interesting. And how does like one stay up to date with the development in construction technology? Like, are there any events or conference or like workshops you recommend?
Yeah, well, so Autodesk University was just last week. That's a big one, and that's become much more on the construction side. So there's definitely that. Locally we have Chicago Build, we have Midwest Build, so those are some good conferences. There's some podcasts out there which are fun to listen to, and then Construction Dive and some different construction based media. Kind of keep you up on some of the new technology that's emerging. Yeah.
I see. And
But also, I think sometimes you have to look outside of construction, because sometimes there are things that are happening that are eventually going to make their way into construction that just aren't here yet.
definitely, I see a lot of like integration, especially from gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and like that is a good segue to like a question I had about thoughts on VR. in
Mhm.
construction? Like, do you think it's being used to its full potential, and what are like the ways one could use it in construction?
Mhm. So I love VR, and I loved it, and I use it a lot as an architect. On the design side, um, it's a no-brainer. You know, it's how many times do you hear like, well, that's not what I thought it was going to look like once you're under construction. So just the tool to be able to put someone in space on the design side, a client in the space on the design side, and say this is what you're going to get is pretty cool. So the value there is easy. On the construction side, it's a little bit different because usually and hopefully, a lot of those decisions have been made and the client is comfortable with the design. So we're not dealing with that. But um, there's a couple of things that are worthwhile. One, basically, anytime you need someone to be in a space where they can't be in the space and they need to have agency, they need to be able to have control of their own body. That's when VR is really cool and really helpful. So there are times where, we've talked about showing it to a client for, your space is going to be under construction and you want to know what it's going to be like for your users, for your employees, to live through that. We can show that to you. Um, so that's good. We've done a little bit on the design side where a client was doing a renovation and they had a great set of drawings, but they wanted their employees to get excited about this move. They wanted their employees to know where they were going to sit. So we spent we modeled up the site. Well, we had the architect's model, and we embellished it a little bit with some materials and things in collaboration with the architect. We didn't make anything up, and we were able to sit down with the owner. We spent 2 days in their lunchroom, and people could come in, put on the headset, and walk to their new office and sit down and see what their view was going to be like. Walk to the little coffee shop, that was on the corner, and not on the corner of their building, not on the corner of the property. Yeah, whatever, that was confusing. Anyway, and so so that was a client-facing VR. So that was really cool. But I think there's also elements for, like, as we're doing coordination and collaboration, to be able to have, especially in the time that we're in with a lot of virtual stuff happening, how can we all get together and talk about this thing that doesn't exist yet, where everybody has the agency to look at the thing that is important to them. If we can do a WebEx and I can control the model, I can control Revit and spin you around, but what if you want to see something else? Like, what if, we can talk about what's important to you. The other thing is people who don't have the ability, and this isn't talked about a lot. If you don't have the ability to move around software, you haven't been trained on Revit or whatever, but you have the ability to move your head around like a normal person. If you put the headset on, you can move around that model and see what you need to see, without having really, it's super intuitive. You don't have to have really any training to do that. So it opens up to a wider audience that information.
For sure. And like, are there any technologies you have seen in like digital twin or facility management space which are good?
We haven't been doing a lot of work in the full-on digital twin facility management space. We've used Reconstruct, which is a really nice tool for putting a lot of information together into a single space, so you can get the construction information over time. So, for instance, you need to go back and say, how was that plumbing running that wall, before it was rocked up with the gypboard. You can go into that space, you can look at different photos throughout construction on top of the model, on top of point clouds and things like that. So that's a useful tool. But I personally have not dealt a lot with, facility management type stuff.
Got it. And what's your vision, like 5 years from now? How would like construction technology look like, and what would be the workflow?
Mm-hmm. That's tough. My vision basically is, kind of like what I was saying before, like how do we safely, efficiently have the right person put the right thing in the right place at the right time for the right amount of money? Like that's all of the stuff that we need to do. And the right thing is really important. So I like the idea of, when we're talking about BIM, I like the idea of object-oriented construction. We talk about object-oriented programming. I like object-oriented construction. Everything is about, okay, that object is a thing that needs to be in the right place, and so that should have all of the information and kind of in itself in order to get itself there. So I like that idea of a single environment where multiple users can access any of the information that they need to build a building, and that's that's really what I would love to see, and we are getting there. Sometimes we're getting there hobbling a bunch of different softwares together. I think more and more that's going to become ideally a single space, or a few different pieces of software.
I see. And like I have seen currently a lot of like movement around metaverses and digital real estate. Like any thoughts on those? A blockchain for construction.
Metaverses and digital real estate. So you're buying. So are we talking like Second Life from the 90s, where you're buying a house and you're going there and hanging out in it? Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think that we'll definitely have some additional life as some of these headsets come out there. Actually, I haven't thought about that too much, but it is kind of exciting. Like what, we talk a lot about the built world and how people interact with it. It's going to be exciting to see like what does a digital built world look like and feel like, over time. We obviously we've had some past examples of that, but yeah, I think that's fun.
Yeah, like the reason I asked is like recently because of the NFT boom and a lot of like metaverses on blockchain are getting like popular, and many communities are from around it, like Decentraland or Collabland. So I was just curious, like are like construction companies or people like folks are considering diversifying their way of business services or something?
It's such early days for that. That's definitely not something we've talked about, but it is kind of fun to think about. Will construction companies get into developing digital assets? Like the NFTs, that's kind of fun. I think there was an architect who sold an NFT house, right, for too much money, but yeah, no, that's really cool. It's exciting. Absolutely.
I see. And I'm gonna ask like few light questions. So what is your a travel place on your bucket list?
Travel place on my bucket list. So Japan is definitely on the bucket list. New Zealand are two places I'd love to go. Those are pretty high.
Is there any book or mentor who made a big impact in your life?
Book or mentor? Yeah, I've been lucky to have some amazing mentors. So I had talked about the archaeology lab at NDSU. The guy who headed up the lab, Dr. Jeff Clark, was well, he was phenomenal for hiring me in the first place. I was those skills I'm still using today. So that was a big deal. So he was a big mentor. My architecture history professor actually was a pretty good mentor, and then one of my early jobs working for Studio Tallow Architecture, the owner and founder of Studio Tallow, Thomas Allman, just taught me a ton of stuff, how to put a building together. So yeah.
I see.
And then books I really like. This is going back there, and it's a little bit weird, but if you get into some of the it's called Chautauquas, from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, there's some great discussions about quality, which I think are fun, and I think any whenever we're talking about quality, then it puts it in a interesting way, thoughtful way. It's worthwhile.
Interesting. I will check it out. What is one thing you like and hate about Chicago?
Oh man, well, I love so much about Chicago. It's an amazing city. I love in the summertime, and you're riding your bike home from the lake, and the fireflies are buzzing around, and you just forgive Chicago for all of its horrible, horrible winters. So, so it's the and then the winters. That's really the only thing I don't like.
I see. And is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview, but you like to share thoughts on those aspects?
Um, no, thank you for that question, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I do. You had some great questions lined up for me, so this was fun. Yeah, um, yeah,
Is
but
there?
go ahead.
No, no, sorry.
I was just gonna say I would like to learn more. Sometime we'll have to get together because I want to learn more about what you're doing over there. I think that's some cool stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Uh, like one question I had is like, is there anything in your professional journey you wish you would have done differently?
Um, I'm sure. I'm sure there is, but uh, it wasn't a direct path to get from where I came from to where I am, but it was things that I didn't expect to be useful all along my path have been useful all along my path. So it's hard to say, yeah, I wish I had left that job earlier and moved over here earlier because I could have been doing this then instead of now. But everything I've done, I'm still gaining benefits from. I've been really lucky that way. So the only thing I guess I would say is when I was in architecture school, I would have taken more construction courses. Um, I think I would have found that useful my entire career. So
Yeah, that's a great. Actually, I was about to ask, like, is there any piece of advice you would like to give students or young professionals who are looking to transition from like architecture to VDC role?
mhm. um, but I think if you're really comfortable in the software side of things, the BIM side of things, you're going to have a good transition. But what's more important is knowing how a building goes together. So like you can run the software, you can find clashes, things like that, but the real value is knowing how to put a building together, and that takes time and effort and training and experience. But the more you can get, the earliest you can get it, I would highly recommend that.
I see. And this is just like a fun question. Is there anything which frustrates you the most about the industry?
That frustrates me the most. I think people just wanting to do things the way they've always done it is probably the most frustrating. Um, that's that's pretty much it.
I see. Like, and I'm curious to know, like, when you face those situations, like, is there a way we can change it, or like, how do we deal those situations?
Mhm. Um, well, it's really tough because it really depends on who the person is and why they feel that way. And the other thing too is they're not always wrong. So it's also, what are we trying to make them do, and is the value really there for this person? And so I think the big key is you have to show the value to that person, how this is going to help that person, or you have to make them understand that this isn't going to help you. This isn't going to make your life easier at all. But what it is going to do, it's going to make the next person's life easier, or it's going to create a better quality building, which is what we all want to do. We all want to create really good buildings.
Awesome. This has been an amazing conversation. Thanks a lot, Doug, for your time. I hope we can meet soon in Chicago.
Yeah, I'd love to meet up with you, man. Thanks for inviting me on this. This was fun. It was good talking to you.